Welcome back. In our previous videos, we learned a bit about mouse event listeners. I'm going to show you an event called enter frame. And using that event, we can make something move smoothly across our stage. Okay? So to get started, I'm going to say File, New, ActionScript 3.0 document. Click OK. And I'm going to save this as, under my H drive, I'm going to say Mr. Davis intro to enter frame. Okay? So to begin, we're going to need two layers. One will be actions. Oops. Actions. The other layer will be art. I'm going to lock my actions layer. And on my art layer, just click on frame 1, use my rectangle tool. Make sure you have no stroke, and I'm going to use a blue fill. I'm going to click and hold shift, so that way I have a square. And make sure when you're drawing with your rectangle tool that you do not have object drawing checked. Okay? Make sure it's not like this, it should be like that. Okay? So, using my selection tool, I'm going to select my square, tap F8 to convert it to a symbol. I'm going to give it a name right now, just blue square. Make it a movie clip. Set the registration point to the middle. Okay? And as you know by now, we need to give our movie clip an instance name so we can access it in the code. So I'm going to say MC, which is short for movie clip, and then I'm just going to say square on the top right here, instance name. Okay? Once you have that, you can go ahead and go under the actions frame. Tap F9 to bring up your actions window. And what we're going to do here is say intro to enter frame. Okay? So what we want to do first is add an enter frame event listener. Okay? And it works exactly the same as how you add a mouse event listener, with just small tiny things changed. Okay? So an event listener for enter frame, how does that work? Well, basically, this event is going to be fired off every single time your game enters a new frame. So if you have the frame rate of 24 FPS, this is going to tick 24 times in a second. If you change that to 60 FPS, it'll tick 60 times in a second. I'll explain that and actually show you how that works in just 1 minute. But let's add this to the stage. We don't need to add it to our object because our stage is going to change frames every time. Even though we only have one frame, it's basically still looping between just that one frame. So it's still going to tick the same amount of times even if we only have one frame. But anyway, stage.add event listener. Okay? And before we were listening for mouse events, this time we're just listening for an event, and it is called enter underscore frame, all caps, just like that. Okay? So we put comma, what do we want to do with our function? Let's give it a name. So let's say move square. We're going to move our square around the stage. So once we have that, we need to create our function. So I'm going to say function move square. It's going to be looking for an event instead of a mouse event, and it's not going to be returning anything, so I'm just going to say void. And once we have that done, all we have to do is reference our movie clip by name. I believe I called mine MC square. And then we're going to change the X property, and we're going to add on 1 to it every time. Okay? So now if we run, we have a square moving across our stage very slowly. So how can we get it to move faster? Well, we could change this number to be something larger, or we can change the frames per second. Before we do that, let's put a comment underneath here that says, or above, say, enter frame gets called depending on the frame rate and FPS. Okay, so faster FPS means more calls per second. Okay, so I'm going to save, and let's put another comment here. Say move square to the right. Save one more time. And going on to our timeline here. See, we have FPS set to 24. At least that's the default for me. If you run, notice it's pretty slow. But if I change this to something crazy like 120 and run, you can see now it's moving a lot faster. Okay, so if I make this to, let's say, 1 frame per second, every time this is getting called, and now it's barely even moving. Okay, so let's go ahead and set our FPS to 60 and run. And once you have that, that's pretty much it. Okay,